Hi. So now we're going to take a look at the future in English. The first thing you need to know is, in English, there is actually no future tense. There is a past tense and there is a present tense, but technically no future tense. Let me show you what I mean. If you take a verb like, for example, break, to break. With this verb we have three forms. We have the present simple, we have the past simple, and we have the past participle. So let's write that in. Present simple, the past simple, and the past participle. So they are the only three forms that we have of this verb. So how can we express the future time in English? Because we don't have a future tense in English, we need to express the future in different ways. And today we're going to take a look at a couple of those ways of expressing future time in English. So, because we don't have the future tense, we are going to call these ways of expressing future time future forms. Now, in English, there are four main ways of expressing the future in English. And which one we choose depends on our attitude of what exactly we want to say. So let's take a look at those four ways. The first way is by using the verb will. Second one is by using going to. The third is by using the present continuous form. And then the fourth is by using the present simple form. So, as I've already said, the form that you choose when you're expressing the future depends on your attitude of what exactly you want to say. So let's start by looking at the future form will. So, will is an auxiliary verb. So will is an auxiliary verb, and what we mean by that is that will is one verb which helps another verb. So we use will with another verb. So for example, you can say, if you want to say, I go to school, if you want to put that into the future, you would say, I will go to school. And because will is an auxiliary modal verb, it does not change with he, she, or it. So you can say, I go to school, or you can say, you will go to school, or she will go to school, he will go to school. All the way down with all the persons, it's the same form. We don't say wills, so we don't put an S. It's very important you realize that. We do not put any S after he, she, or it. It's he will go, she will go, you will go, I will go. All the same form all the way down. So, there's a positive sentence. We put that in as positive. That's a positive sentence. I will go to school. So let's see a negative sentence. So the negative is I will not go to school. So here we have the same thing. All we have to do is put not after will. We don't need to say do or does or any of that. It's just will not. And a question. So as with other sentences, if we want to have a question, we can just change the auxiliary verb and the subject so it becomes will I. Well, how about will you go to school? Okay, so that's all you have to do. So now let's look at the reasons why we use will when we're talking about the future. We use will to express promises, predictions, and decisions at the time of speaking. So there are the three reasons why we would use will to express the future. The first one is promises. So for example, if someone asks you, will you help me? And then you will say, I will. That's a promise. Second one is a prediction. So maybe you will say, my team will win the cup. That's a prediction. You're making a prediction into the future. You don't necessarily have any evidence, but you're making a prediction for the future. Now, the next one is a decision made at the time of speaking. So what does this mean? This means that you make a decision without thinking about it. Okay? You don't have any prior evidence. You don't have any plan, any arrangement. Somebody says, I'm going to go to the cinema. And you say, I'll come too. So you make the decision at the time of speaking. Okay, without thinking about it, without any plan. Okay, so this is why we use will. Now, just a little important note. Just a little important note with will. When we use will in the question form, we can say, will you go? But we don't usually say, will I go? So, with I, we don't usually do that. So this one is correct, this one is wrong. So what do we do instead? Instead of saying, will I, we change the auxiliary verb. So you'd say, shall I go? So, again, if you want to make a question form using will, we change it to shall I for the first person. For the second person, we can say will I, will he, will she. Just the first one, we say shall I, not will I. Okay, so that's why we use will. Again, we use will when we are making a prediction, when we are promising, or when we are making a decision before any planning. So it's a spontaneous decision. It's a decision that you make without thinking about it. Let's move on to the second future form. The second future form is going to. So how do we use going to? So the formula is subject plus going to plus the infinitive. So let's take the sentence about going to school. So you would say, actually, what we need to do here is we need to put in to be, the auxiliary verb. So it's actually subject plus to be plus going to plus the infinitive. So let's see how that works. I am going to go to school. You are going to go to school. She is going to go to school. And he is going to go to school. So with this one we have the subject, the verb to be, going to, and then the infinitive. Okay, and that's how we do it. That's how we do the positive sentence. Now let's take a look at the negative sentence. So this one here is the positive sentence. Now the negative sentence. I am going to school. I am not going to go to school. Okay, and that's as easy as it is. You just put I am going to school for the positive sentence. For the negative sentence, I am not going to school. And now you have a negative sentence. What about a question? So the question becomes, again, we just swap these around, the auxiliary verb and the subject. Am I going to go to school? So there you have it. The positive sentence, the negative sentence, and the question. So now that we know the form or the construction of using going to, why do we use going to? So we use going to express a plan. So this is something that you thought about before. Remember, we use will to talk about a decision that we have not thought about, but we use going to talk about a plan, something that we have thought about before we make the decision. So if I say, I am going to school, this means that I am thinking about it, I make a plan, and then I decide to do it. So you plan, and then you do it. And we also use it for so going to is also used for a prediction based on evidence. Remember, we talked about will. Will was a prediction, but without the evidence. For example, I think my team will win the cup. But going to is different. Going to talks about you see something and then you make a prediction based on what you see. For example, I can look into the sky, I see big dark clouds, and I think it is going to rain. Not it will rain, but it is going to rain. Or maybe I see my pen just at the edge here, and I think, oh my God, my pen is going to fall. I don't say my pen will fall, I say my pen is going to fall, because I can see the evidence, and then I think about a prediction that it is going to fall. So far we have will and we have going to. We remember that will is about a prediction or a promise or a decision at the time of speaking. Going to is about a plan or a prediction based on evidence. So now let's look at future form number 3. So future form number 3 is the present continuous. Now you see it's the present continuous. How can the present continuous talk about the future? Well, we usually use the present continuous with a time in the future that tells us that we're not talking about now, we're talking about a time in the future. For example, so here is a time in the future. I'm playing. That's the present continuous. So if I say this weekend I am playing football, it means that I have a plan to play football at the weekend. Okay? And that's all you need to do. So you think, oh, present continuous, it's happening now? But no, because we have this time in the future that tells us we're not talking about now, but we're talking about a time in the future. So that is the positive. Now the negative. This weekend I am not playing football. That's all you have to do. Just put in not and you understand that the sentence is in the negative. Now question. This weekend, am I playing football? So you see again, to form a question, all you have to do is change these two around. The subject and the auxiliary verb, just change it around and that's okay. And that's how we form the future form with the present continuous. So the next question is, why do we use the present continuous to talk about the future? What are we trying to express? What does it mean? So, we use the present continuous to talk about fixed arrangements in the future. These are plans that do not change. So what's the difference between using the present continuous and using going to? So going to is a plan. It's a plan, but it may change. But using the present continuous, the plan will not change. So, for example, if I say, let's take a look at these two sentences. The first sentence, I am going to go to Spain. That's using the going to form. The second one, I am going to Spain next month. So the first one, this is a plan, but maybe it will change. I have a plan to go to Spain, but I don't have a flight, I don't have a hotel, I don't have a Spanish phrasebook. But if I say I am going to go to Spain, that means it's not going to change. So I have my flight, I have my hotel accommodation, and I have my phrasebook. It's not going to change. So that's the difference. This is a plan. Maybe it will change. I haven't organized everything yet. This is an arrangement that will not change. Everything is organized. So that's the difference between those two. So let's recap. The present continuous is used to talk about fixed arrangements that are all organized and they won't change. And we usually express it using a time phrase in the future. That time phrase will tell us that we are not talking about now, but we are talking about a time in the future. So, now we have taken a look at 3 future forms. Now the fourth one. The fourth future form is the present simple. Now, the present simple is used to express the future just for official times or scheduled timetabled events. For example, the cinema, your school, trains, at the airport, something official. It's not a time that you decide, but it's a time that somebody else decides. For example, my train leaves at 4 p.m. We don't say my train will leave at 4 p.m. or my train is going to leave at 4 p.m. but we usually say my train leaves at 4 p.m. School starts at 9 p.m. This is not a decision that I made, it's an official time made by somebody else. So the train company makes this decision and the school makes this decision. So it's an official timetable time. And that's all. Now, how do we do the negative and the question? Well, it's the same way that we express anything in the present simple. Okay? The negative would be, my train doesn't leave at 4 p.m. School doesn't start at 9 a.m. It's very important as well to have a time that tells us that we are talking about the future. Okay, so let's do a recap. Okay, let's go through the 4 ways of expressing future forms in English. So as we said, the first one is will. So it's maybe a promise, prediction, so maybe it's a promise, maybe it's a prediction, or maybe it's a decision at the time of speaking. In other words, it's a decision that you make without actually planning it or thinking about it. So, going to, it's a prediction based on evidence. For example, watch out, the pen is going to fall. It's going to rain. Something like this. Or it's a plan without arrangements. Remember I said I was going to go to Spain? This means I don't have any flight yet. I don't have any accommodation. I don't have any Spanish phrasebook. Okay. The next one is the present continuous. So we said that the present continuous was a fixed arrangement. Okay, so that means it's a plan where I have arranged everything. So I could say, I'm going to Spain next month, which means I have my flight, I have booked accommodation, and I bought a Spanish book. So now everything is organized and I'm going to Spain. And then the last one, present simple. So this is a timetabled event. It's a timetable event, or it's an official time. It's a time that you do not choose, but somebody else chooses. For example, the cinema. The movie begins at 6 o'clock. Not the movie is beginning. The movie is going to begin, or the movie will begin. But the movie begins because the cinema decided this time, and it's the official time. So, let's use an example. Imagine I meet my friend, and my friend tells me that he got married. So, I ask him, oh, you're married, what's it like? And he said, it's great. So then I decide, my friend says it's nice to be married. Maybe I will get married. Again, I just make that decision without thinking about it. I speak to my friend, he says he's married, he likes it, then I decide I will. I make a decision without thinking. Next one, going to. So now that I've decided to get married, I need to find somebody to get married to. I meet someone, I think she's great, and I think I am going to get married to her. Okay, so now I have a plan. I haven't organized anything, but I have a plan. Okay, so I ask her to marry me, she says yes. Okay, now I say I am getting married. So I change from I am going to get married, now she says yes, I am getting married in April. So this means that I found somebody, I asked her, she said yes, we've organized everything is organized, I'm getting married in April. And in this one, then we need to talk about just one more thing, the wedding. I can say the wedding starts at 1 p.m. So from all of this, from making a decision, to a plan, to organizing, to the main event. You see the progression? They are the future forms of will. So which one you want to use depends on your attitude. Is it a decision? Is it a plan? Is it organized? Or is it an event? So they're the 4 ways that you talk about the future in English. Okay, that's it. Bye-bye.